Okay. What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, and I'm with my very good friend Brian, Mr. Core's hair. Brian, how you doing today?
Doing good, Pete.
Yes, Brian lives in the New York area, and I live in Texas. And right now, we are dealing with almost like a post-apocalyptic scenario over here. There's a big freeze. School's been closed for 3 days. It's going to be closed tomorrow too. And my power went out for a little while, and so it made me think a lot about the show we're going to discuss today, The Last of Us.
Some of the pictures you've been posting online have very much reminded me of this show.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
also, it's just funny to me that I think it's colder there than it is here in New Jersey.
yeah. It's so weird, man. As we mentioned in our review, because we've been doing this show since the first episode. The very first scene that you see, well, after the cold open, is in Austin, Texas. The show begins in Austin, Texas,
Yep.
and so now we are moving into the future, and we're moving to a different part of the country, and we're talking about episode 3, long, long time. So, Brian, first off, I wanted to point out that we go from Joel and Ellie, and we cut to Bill and Frank, and it's pretty much the whole episode is just Bill and Frank, right?
Yes.
Um, did you like how they kind of segued to Bill's situation? Like, do you remember it was like Joel and Ellie, and then they saw this like pit full of dead bodies, right?
Yes.
Is there something like that in the game where it's just like a dead body pit?
I think they imply that at points in the game. Um, I've actually been rewatching the cutscenes. I don't actually have time to play it. I'm playing too many other games. I can't replay that game again right now. So
Yeah,
I'm watching the cutscenes of it, but I do vaguely remember them implying that a similar uh, outcome where the Fedro was just flat out killing people when the quarantine zones were filled,
yeah.
just
Right,
because for the
okay.
same idea that if they can't protect them, then they're just potential more infected.
Yeah. So like, utilitarian, so like bleak. It's like, okay, well, hey, if we can't fit you in here, then you're just another target. We're just gonna take you out. And so they actually focus on the bones of like a mother and an infant. And then they like cut back to the past to 2003, and there's that mom and that infant about to get on the bus to go get taken to the ditch to go get shot. So pretty freaking bleak. But then the episode kind of takes a left turn and gets a lot more optimistic. So I was gonna say Nick Offerman playing a survivalist character, that seems pretty on brand, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, like he is very he does a lot of like he has like his like own woodworking company too, so it's very on brand for him to be this character. I even think he looks a decent amount like the character of Bill in the game.
Yeah. Well, have you ever watched Parks and Rec or no?
I've watched some Parks and Rec, but not extensively.
Doesn't it seem like Bill is the kind of character that like Ron Swanson would want to be?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, yeah. So, a lot of people were crying. Like they would post on Twitter, like I'm crying, or I've been crying so much over this episode. My wife started crying once Bill started playing "Long, Long Time" by Linda Ronstadt. Does that song is that in the game at all or no?
I don't believe so. I believe this was chosen for the show because I think the song is about like middle aged love, so to speak. So
Yeah.
and it's appropriate for their relationship in this episode.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about that relationship. So you have Bill. He's living on his own. Essentially, the whole town's been cleared out, and now he is left on his own in his house. He has an underground bunker that's filled with guns and everything you could need to survive. He goes and he transforms his town into his own little complex, basically, and lives there for at least like 3 years, right, by himself.
Yes.
Yeah. And then after 3 years, there's a person that stumbles into one of his traps, and it is Frank. And so Bill is played by Nick Offerman, and then Frank is played by Murray Bartlett, who I keep saying every single episode. I like him so much. I think he was fantastic in this episode. You don't meet Frank in the game, though, right?
That is correct. He is just referenced.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I they show his body. I don't remember if they show his body or not, but by the time you find out more about him, he's already dead.
Yeah, yeah. So, what about Bill though? You meet him.
You do meet Bill in the game, yes.
Yeah.
Bill is there when Joel and Ellie get there, and same basic idea is that Joel needs a car so he can start traveling out west, and they need to go get a battery from somewhere on the other side of town. But obviously, there's infected there, so there's actually a lot of infected. I mean, obviously, the game, you need enemies, you need challenges to overcome. So a lot of this sequence in the game is just sneaking around Bill's area, the town he's in, which isn't as protected as it was in the show, and with Bill, and then fighting off the infected and then getting the battery.
So when you get the battery, does Bill then die in the game?
Bill does not die.
Okay.
What happens is when you find the battery, Bill goes to the place where he thinks the battery is, but they find out it's gone. And as they're escaping, they go to a nearby house that Frank was staying in. And he was the one that took the battery, and he left a suicide note for Bill, essentially. And then he hung himself. There's no mention of illness of any kind. And while they do sort of hint at their relationship, it's not like super flat out said, but like heavily implied. Bill does mention a partner and this guy that was being a jackass, which is Frank. And then he seems to be really upset about seeing the body and then reading the note afterwards.
Huh. Okay. Do you know who plays Bill in the game?
I do not. It's not Nick Offerman.
Right. Okay. That's very interesting. That's very interesting because did you watch the behind the scenes by any chance after the episode? Yes. Okay. So the guy who is the creator of the game, I forgot his name, Nick Druckmann
Nick Druckmann, yes.
Yeah, okay. So he's the guy that created the game. He makes this point right at the behind the scenes at the very beginning of it. He says that if they can change something and it's for the better, they will make a change for the show. But if it makes it worse, then they don't. And he said that by going into Bill and Frank's relationship, they were making something better. And also in that, he talks about how every episode basically shows like doing something out of an act of love, or how like love affects people. And he was saying that this particular episode focused on innocent love, or like that sort of that innocent romance. Whereas I think that like probably in other episodes, like, we've seen Joel dealing with the grief of losing his daughter in the first episode, right? So that's sort of like the consequence of love is like, a loved one has died and you're dealing with that grief. In this, I mean, it is a true love story and it is beautiful. And honestly, having not played the game, I kept thinking, okay, well, what horrible thing is going to happen? Are there going to be some raiders that are going to come and like hold them hostage? Is Joel going to show up at their house and they're both going to be dead? Is one of them going to get infected? And it just was this like bottle episode that told their lifelong love story. Yeah. So as someone that played the game, how do you feel about that?
I do agree that it was an improvement. One of the criticisms I have in the game is that, the parts of the actual gameplay is essentially a murder simulator. You're killing infected, you're killing, raiders or whatever you want to call them, other humans, and that's a large part of the game outside of the story. So watching the story, it is already very cinematic and very TV or movie like, but all the actual gameplay, which is fun, but it kind of takes away from the story in a sense, because it's like, how do you take this seriously when this guy is literally murdering hundreds of people?
Right.
And I'm not like I obviously I'm a video game enthusiast. I'm not anti-violence in games or anything like that, but it is sort of like weird to have this heavy-handed content with these characters that you're supposed to sympathize and identify with, and they're just often murdering people.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
this was really great. I really think this is a great thing to expand upon. It was very lightly hinted at. Maybe not lightly, but it was implied that Bill and Frank were in a relationship and that Bill was gay, and it was a romantic relationship. They don't ever really say it, but how you tell is Bill mentions his partner and losing his partner or his partner leaving, and then at the end, once they get the truck running, you find out that Ellie stole some stuff from Bill's bunker, and among that was some comic books and like a Playgirl equivalent magazine, of
Oh.
naked men.
Oh, interesting. Okay. When you're going through their town, is it all like? Oh, you said it's not as well protected. Is there like things like Frank's artwork and stuff, or no? Is that all
No,
added for the show? No.
I
Okay.
don't think so. Yeah, because it looks exactly like you've been seeing like the cities look. It's
Yeah.
just really overgrown with nature and all that.
Yeah.
Bill's little area was a lot more contained to just one house and not a whole like block. And there was a bit more danger around them in the game, but more so in terms of clickers rather than other people.
I see. Yeah. It's really interesting because me, I say this all the fucking time, but I always like I hate exposition dumps, and I always feel like show don't tell. And there's this great sequence where after Bill and Frank have been together for like decades at this point, um, Frank is like painting one of his pictures, and they just show his picture kind of close up, and you see that like the lines have gotten all blurry, like he's kind of messed up his picture, and you can kind of draw that conclusion of maybe he has like Parkinson's or like MLS or something like that, right?
Yeah,
And they
some
never,
kind of degenerative disease. Yeah,
right. Like no one ever says like you have this disease. Like no one says that. And then like later in the episode when Frank admits that he wants to die, he says they didn't have a cure for this before the world ended, so no one's gonna be able to help us. They never outright say what it is, and I just love little things like that where it's like it's not you have to hold our hand and tell us everything. Let us fill in the blanks.
yeah. No, I appreciated that too because if they were like, "Oh, I know what this is," like you're not doctors. I mean, like how do you know?
Right. Really good
Yeah,
point.
so I do think that was a nice realistic touch to it.
Yeah. And I mean, so here's the thing, right? Is that the scene that Sherry was crying at that I mentioned before when they play that Linda Ronstadt song? I'd never heard that song before, and that's the name of the episode. And they play it at the end of the episode. To me, and I've said this a bunch of times on when we cover stuff. There's this sort of higher level of shows where it's like real like thought and effort, and it's not so much about like putting on a product or like oh, this is this brand or like this is a Marvel thing or the DC thing. Just like a real person trying to tell a story that connects with the audience. We have that scene where like Bill and Frank are in Bill's house and he makes the food for him, and then Frank goes over to the piano and starts playing. Like that was something else, man. That fucking scene that got me
Yeah,
when Nick Offerman plays the piano. Oh man.
yeah, that got me too. Although I think the scene that got me the most was the strawberries. I don't know why. Just
Yeah.
the the um the level of joy that Bill expresses in that moment was unexpected and very realistic. It's like, holy shit, this is something I haven't had, and I'm legitimately happy. I'm going to make this weird sound that I didn't think I could make, probably.
Yes. And that's why it's such an awesome episode because Bill, like, if you look at him just on paper, he looks like this sort of survivalist kind of nut job guy. And then he has this like soft side to him that comes out with Frank. And I'm actually really glad that they made that choice to have them die together and I kind of have like mutual suicide or whatever. Versus the way that you explained in the game. I think that that's better. And I certainly am glad that like they didn't get killed by like clickers or like raiders or something.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it was nice to have that little like be thrown for a loop. Like I didn't expect it. Like when he mentions when Frank mentions the line about the other pills. I'm like, wait, what? It's a nice little surprise in a good way that, because when you're expecting everything, sometimes it is fun to watch and see it played out in live action. But, it is nice to be surprised, and especially if it's a good change, like they said. Like they said, if it makes it better, then it's a good change. And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I think the creator of the game has even said that he wants to surprise people that play the game. Yeah.
I also really like the touch of the last thing you see is the window of their room. And you just see the window, and that's it. Again, leaving it up to your imagination of what it could look like. I know that in the note to Joel, he says it won't be a pretty sight.
Right.
But like that's the perfect example also of like less is more,
Exactly. People keep comparing this to The Walking Dead. Like Danny keeps saying that he's heard it compared to The Walking Dead. And I feel like on The Walking Dead, they would show their two corpses, and it would be kind of like this disturbing thing to see their two dead bodies, Or like when they're going back to that bedroom after the drugs have started to kick in, like they'd start stumbling or something, it'd be this over dramatic thing. But it's like, nope, they go back to the bedroom, they close the door, then you just see things through that window. And it's just like you said, it's just like really well done, very tasteful. So this episode was written by the man who's written like pretty much every episode. I think his name's like Craig Bazin or something like that. whatever the writer guy is that writes the show. And he's just really fucking good. Like it was just like really well done. The director was Peter Hoare, Hoar, right? And he has done a lot of like genre things. He's directed episodes of Doctor Who, and he's directed episodes of Daredevil, and what the fuck was the third one? I wrote it down too. I'm sorry. Umbrella Academy too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's done a lot of the stuff that we like.
Nice.
Yeah. And I thought, because I remember on Twitter, I saw someone say there was some kind of connection between this episode and the Black Mirror episode, San Junipero, but I couldn't
First
see.
To mention that too, because that was like a great love story too. Another queer love story.
Right.
That really sticks with you too. Just like this, I would absolutely put both those episodes in the same league.
Right. Yeah, you could almost do like a double header. You could like watch one and then watch the other one. Yeah. So have you watched like a lot of Black Mirror or no?
Yeah, I think I watched all of it. Maybe a little bit of the most recent season I didn't see, but all the earlier stuff I've definitely seen. The Choose Your Own Adventure movie I did a few versions of too.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, I remember doing that too. What's your favorite Black Mirror episode? I know this is a little tangent, not related to anything we're talking about. But...
Oh man, I mean, San Junipero is definitely one of them. God, I can't even think of any other ones right now.
You know the one, where it's the guy from Nope, and like I always know his fucking name too, because me and Danny are always talking about him. You know the guy that's in Nope, and he's also in Get Out.
Yeah, Daniel
Okoye. Yeah. He's fucking great. He's in
Black Panther too.
He's in Black Panther. He's in the first one, right? But anyway, he's in this one episode where everyone's like on not treadmills, they're on bikes. Remember that? And it's like
yes.
That's like one of my favorite ones too.
Yeah. God, yeah. I haven't thought about this show in such a long time. I really like the Star Trek one too.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. God, I can't remember anything else.
See, but like
it's literally been like 5 or 6 years since I've watched it. So.
Oh yeah. So you haven't seen like the one with like Miley Cyrus?
Yeah, I saw that one.
Okay. That was like maybe that. Yeah. And then you see the one with the two guys that play in the video. Like one of them's I think we talked about it, like Falcon and Okay,
yeah, because it's like Mantis and like the Black Power Ranger, like the avatars, and then it's like Black Manta and
Falcon.
And Falcon, yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, I think the reason why I was talking about Black Mirror so much is because this almost felt like it could just be a Black Mirror episode. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not really a twist to it, but yeah.
Right, good point, yeah. So, anyway, what I was going to say is that when you tie in the people that are the main characters, and you have Ellie and Joel, right? Like, I felt like their parts in this episode I didn't really care about, and actually when they went back to Ellie and Joel, I'm like, okay, I like them, but I want to see more of Bill and and Frank. And I did though like when you saw Bill interact with Joel in the past.
Yes, I thought that was a nice touch too. They're kind of like a little. They're very similar people,
Yes.
but they do find some kind of common ground, I guess. And it was a nice touch to see them in the episode. It's almost funny to me that it sort of like how we got a Mandalorian episode or two in Boba Fett, and we wanted to stick with that rather than Boba Fett. But reverse actor this
time. Yeah, right. Well, Pedro Pascal, there is something to his acting. Like, I always wonder when it comes to a scene, like how much is it just like the way that he wants to do something versus what the director's telling him. Like if the director's telling him literally, hey, say this like this. Because there's one part that I loved so much when Tess and Frank go to talk for a minute and they walk away from the table, and then you have Bill and Joel at the table, and Bill's got the gun pointed at Joel, and they're talking, and they kind of seem like they're seeing eye to eye. And Joel even says something like, hey, I could get you this kind of copper wire. I can do this kind of thing. And he's like, I can get that gun out of my face. Like the way he says it, it's like you're not expecting him to say it just like that. And it's so good. You know, Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, totally remember. Yeah. I also really liked to the other scene when Joel and Tess are leaving. They start talking about in the background the radio codes, which was a nice callback as well.
Yeah, the 70s and 80s. Right. So, I mean, like, that reminded me of The Mandalorian, too, because there's so many times where he has to kind of do, like, little threats like that, or someone's holding a gun to him. And it's just something about Pedro Pascal's delivery where he's so subtle, but yet you could tell it's like, no, don't fuck with this guy.
Yeah, he's very imposing with saying and doing very little, yeah.
Well put, man. Well put. So I think we can kind of wrap this up, but I wanted to bring up, last but not least, and maybe this is the most fucking, the biggest part to talk about, is that this episode in itself was controversial. Like, I think that people were upset because they felt like it deviated so much from the game, and there was backlash about it having this focus on this gay couple. Did you read anything like about that?
I feel like, so for once, I feel like I've read more positive things about the episode and how great of a love story this was, rather than the homophobic backlash. I think anyone saying that using it was a deviation from the game is just a signal to say that I don't like I'm homophobic and I don't approve of queer romance. And just whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, right, is that I feel like I'm so deep within my own echo chamber that, like, any kind of mention of controversy, I don't see people say it, like, as their individual tweet. Like, I don't see someone tweet something negative about it. I see someone responding to someone's tweet, right?
Yes. But, I mean, in terms of the other side of it, the positives, like, it actually got talked about in a meeting at my job. Like, so we had a meeting, there was like 15, 20 people, and people were talking about it for a good 2-3 minutes. I didn't hear it because I turned my volume down because I hadn't finished the episode yet. Just in case, didn't want it spoiled. But they were saying positive things, like very positive things. And I've seen tons of people that I don't normally see post things, even on Facebook. Like, like, holy crap, this was incredible.
Yeah.
And it just kind of speaks volumes. So I definitely saw more positive to this episode than I did negative. But I have heard about that backlash, that homophobic backlash to it, which I just think is just stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I think it was Chris. Yeah, our friend Chris. He actually had this great point of like, do we ever see gay people complaining about a romance between two straight people? Like, and like he was basically implying that like we see that all the time, and that's not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Did you see his tweet about that or?
Yes, I think I did. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, I mean, I definitely I would definitely say that there are probably a larger percentage of heterosexual people in the world than homosexual.
Absolutely.
But, and I could sort of see that there's a lot of that, a lot more of that representation in TV these days, which I think is a good thing. But I don't think anybody should feel that it's like being slammed over their head. It's something that exists. Maybe they are trying to do it to kind of desensitize people to it into accepting it more. Maybe that is an ulterior motive for some of these creators. But I mean, it's still, to me, is like, I don't know why people care about this. Like, why is this a thing? Like, why do people take issue with this?
Right. I agree. It's like literally all it happens is it's these two people that love each other and they find romance. That's it. There's nothing else to it. There's nothing that's like they do that's controversial. I was thinking to myself, what if Bill was a heterosexual man and he was the same exact character, survivalist guy, and then he finds a woman that comes in? Would that make this episode different? Would the episode be boring if it was just the same exact scenario, but it's a heterosexual woman that comes in?
So they would still be different personality types. So I think it would still be impactful. But I think it's more impactful because it is two men, honestly.
Oh yeah. Well, because I agree. See, if it was a heterosexual man and a woman, it would be interesting, at least in the regards of maybe this man was a complete shut-in and he's never been intimate with anyone, and then he's with someone that like accepts him and they find love. Right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're two gay men, it's like, the end of the world essentially allowed them to have this time by themselves and to be who they were and have their own little world to themselves.
Yeah, I feel like that because they're opposites, because, as I mentioned, there is a greater percentage of heterosexual people in the world. The fact that they found each other and had that beautiful thing feels so much more like destiny,
Right.
That's much grander in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, well put, man. So I have this one quote that was a response. It was Raul Coley. You know who that is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right from like a lot of the Mike Flanagan stuff, and he was in iZombie. Anyway, he played all the games. He's a big video game guy, and I saw he had this multi-tweet response to people's criticism of this episode, and he had this one quote. I'm just going to read it real quick. This is the last one. I just feel like this, Brian, ties in with a lot of the discussion that you and I have on this channel. He says, "You know who doesn't belong in the arts? Weird, toxic masculinity, jock-type, homophobic dudes who fucked around in art classes and thought drama was gay. But for some strange reason, they've grown up thinking we should only be making stuff for them and keeping all the progressive stuff off their screens. The entitlement is hilarious." I was like,
yeah. That's what we were talking about the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. I just, I always remember like kind of being in English classes and stuff, and people would make jokes about certain things, but the reason why we would talk about certain things in English class is because for its time it was topical, or it was like ahead of its time, and we grow because they show us stuff that we don't normally see.
Yeah.
That's why it's called progressive. Anyway, I'm off my fucking soapbox, and I think we're done with our episode.
Yes.
If you guys like me and Brian, if this is your first time watching us, well, we did the first 2 episodes of The Last of Us, but also this week we did a discussion of all the new movies that are coming out from DC that James Gunn announced. So you guys should definitely check out that video on our channel. It's called Gods and Monsters because it's focusing on the Gods and Monsters phase of James Gunn's plan. And then next week we will be back with another episode of The Last of Us. But then, Brian, I think
if these shows aren't your thing or anything, too, we'll be covering Ant-Man soon in a couple weeks, and then probably Mandalorian in early March.
Yes. So hopefully you have a boner for Pedro Pascal, and you'll be back with us in some form or the other. And all right, we'll